and you're very welcome to today's programme. Now, my next guests in studio, this is a very interesting story. They're a Mayo-based technology company based in Lacanvy, and they established this live stream sports eventing, which is kind of quite common these days, that stream all sorts of sporting events online. But now, due to public demand, they've expanded their business to an entirely unexpected market, and that is live streaming of funerals. Now, it might sound strange, but, you know, if you have, sadly, a bereavement in your family and you've got maybe elderly relatives living in Florida or New Zealand or some other far-flung country who can't get home for the funeral, what could be nicer than actually being able to watch it on the computer? And I'm joined in studio this morning by Brendan Dowd and his son Connor. You're both welcome. Brendan, this is an unusual kind of a story, isn't it?
Oh, definitely, Tom. Yes, it is unusual, and it's a route that we didn't actually pick to go down. It's just a route that was that developed as you put in the introduction there. There are a lot of people that are in a situation where they have to face funerals. You know, I've probably been fortunate enough that I've not been in that situation. But I guess my background, to start with, you know, my father was one of six. A man from Roscommon, just outside of Ballahadreen, and of those six people in my father's family, 5 of them emigrated. He emigrated to the UK, and the other 4 went to America. That wouldn't be an unusual situation with most people in Ireland. I think we all know of the background to the people in Ireland. They are spread all over the world and continue to spread all over the world. How this all happened is, my son Connor was in a transition year and got involved with an organisation, Local Streaming, and Mayo GAA TV. And we got involved in that. I expressed an interest in it. We got involved in live streaming of that. And on the back of that, we were asked to live stream a funeral which actually had a lot of press release. I have to be sort of careful.
Of course, of confidentiality. But you were approached by a family because presumably they had relations living in other countries who weren't able to make it to the funeral. Correct.
Again, you know, I kind of made that introduction about my family because things haven't changed in Ireland to an extent. People are still moving. People are moving to other countries. And basically, the individual involved, and I must also point out that I've spoken to people of the David family, and they're happy enough for us to speak of this, because I think they see the importance of it, and they've expressed what it meant to them. So Declan Devitt, who people will know, was unfortunately in a very tragic accident on Christmas Day of this year. So he did get quite a lot of press release. But the background to it is that he spent 3 years in New Zealand, as a lot of people that are currently in Ireland will have spent time in other parts of the world. So in his 3 years in New Zealand, he obviously made a lot of friends. And, you know, the actual call came out, you know, from the people in New Zealand, look, it's not possible for us to get back for this funeral. The time zone won't allow it. The time period, because, as we all know, funerals happen very quickly here, you know, within 2 to 3 days. Well, there was actually one of his best friends apparently did make it back, which was absolutely incredible. But, you know, there'll still be a majority of people that cannot get to it, would like to be at it. And we were asked, could we stream it? And we see these things as a challenge, really. Lots can be done. And in that instance, we did. We streamed it. But if I can also go back another little bit as to why I felt this sort of technology should be enhanced or should be used. Prior to that, or a good few years prior to that, there was another lad in Lewisburg that people will remember in the area, and Alan Durkin. And he actually was killed in Australia. And I remember his body was brought back a number of years back. And I thought to myself at the time, you know, there must be people in Australia that were his friends over that time that also want to see it. Now, I asked his cousin the other day what that was about and what it was, and he actually said that's 5 years ago. Now, we've had Skype, we've had FaceTime, we've had all sorts of technology that's out there, but we didn't sort of push it forward, is can we bring funerals to them? And that's really where we are. You know, we've done it, and we did it in that instance. The other interesting thing about that particular... So if we go back to the case of the David family, and the David family, were happy enough for us to speak about this. With the David funeral, I was absolutely astonished at the response that we got. We had 3,000 hits on the live stream. But another interesting point on that statistic was that 25% of those hits, that's some 750 people, actually listened to that, or watched that stream, should I say, live, outside of Ireland. So that kind of brings back what we were coming from, and I started with the discussion at the start, that we're bringing the rest of the world into this stream. We're bringing it to outside of Ireland. So those people that left Ireland that cannot get back to these funerals, are seeing these funerals, are being part of this service. And that's really the fascinating side that we've seen of it. There's 750, so 20% of the 3,000 that viewed it, 750, are outside of the country. So more people viewed this funeral outside of the country than inside of the church. And that's what we see the potential.
Yeah. And even though all of this idea is in its infancy, per se, if we were to fast forward 3 years down the road, do you think that the live streaming on the internet of funerals will be almost commonplace?
Well, I guess it depends on what people want. And I suppose it's a mindset, really. We do see it, one extreme to the other. You introduced that as the football, and I've mentioned the football. The sporting events are very exciting, full of entertainment, and people want to see that. Do people want to see people at the worst time, mourning a particular death of thing? And we look at that really as we don't want to be intrusive. Whether I see all people in 3 years' time wanting it, a question, possibly not wanting it, but I think there's a strange situation here that people want to have a memory. That's the last thing that they see of this person, and they want the memory of them. And actually, I think you said it in your introduction, it is kind of a strange situation that we put ourselves in. But I think funerals are absolutely beautiful events, and what I've found really is, particularly in Ireland, people step up to the plate, and some of the best music I've ever heard is in a church. And to not record that, to not actually be able to go back on that, to have that in your memory, is an opportunity missed. It's an interesting question. People seem, when you look at other events of funeral, they'll spend months and months planning these things. Very often it happens, it normally happens very quickly. People don't get any warning of a death. They don't know what the situation of family circumstances are, So I guess that they probably won't do it, as a matter of routine. But I think that the services, if they're available...
in circumstances where somebody is a relatively close relation who can't get back, whether it's because of logistics or because of health or old age, to have that ability or that facility to sit down in front of a laptop and actually watch the funeral as it's streamed live from the church somewhere in the west of Ireland is definitely something that I think can appeal and has potential. Brendan, thank you for that. Conor is your son, and Conor, as Dad was saying there, it was almost by default this business came on stream, pardon the pun, because you're a TY or were a TY student, and you came up with it. Was it your idea?
Well, I kind of started off with the camera, and he kind of started off a little bit on the computer. Between the two of us, when we got in with local streaming.club, we kind of just
took it from there.
Yeah, took it from there.
Yeah, and are you streaming club matches in Mayo weekly or on a regular basis?
Well, yeah, we're also involved in Mayo GATV, so we do a lot of work with them. So we do a lot.
So most Sundays, would you be covering a club game?
Well, we do a lot of the championship, like the finals and the semi-finals and the quarter-finals.
And all of those. So when it gets to the latter stages of a competition, you guys will kick in. In terms of technology and what's needed, if, for example, a listener out there this morning has an elderly father or mother who has passed away, and they know there's relations in a far-flung country that won't be able to make it home, and they wanted it to be streamed on the internet so that their relations could watch it, is there a lot of logistically camera work to be set up in advance, or is it fairly, can you guys, as they say, can you organise the live streaming as quick as we can organise the funeral?
Well, yeah, it's more or less, it's quick to set up. There's a little bit of gear involved, but it's quite quick to set up. It can normally be set up within an hour and a half, 2 hours, and set up.
And as Dad was saying, their sensitivity is so important. So as long as we get all of the activity that's going on on the altar, and that there's good sound quality of the eulogy, the readings, and what is going on. That's the important thing. It's not about capturing the congregation, is it, as much?
No, it's very kind of like sensitive. You have to watch what you're recording, and you kind of have to be very mindful that the family don't want to be riding close on them.
Brendan, how many funerals have you streamed now?
Well, we started in just after Christmas there, and we in the month of January we've done 4.
Really, that many?
Yeah, we're now getting inquiries up to two to three per week. I mean, it's generally in the west of Ireland has been our sort of target market at the moment. We're sort of we did get a request in Clare. We did one in Clare, but as we're building it up, we have the capacity to do a number of funerals, and in fact we have the capacity to do it simultaneously. I mean, you asked Conor about the logistics of it. Conor actually is the brains behind all of this, in that, as with all of this, you need somebody young that can sort of get through all of this this technology. I mean, but from a practical point of view, we need a couple of cameras. We need a sound system. We basically take it in similar to the radio station here. We'd have a mixing desk because it's important we capture the sound. We'd very often go with 2 cameras. The other issue, obviously, is we need an internet connection. And I guess, another point that we as is a mobile service, streaming in actual fact in churches has gone on, but it's really to sort of the privileged few. It's mainly in cathedrals, and it's mainly in the sort of the bigger suburbs and maybe the more wealthy suburbs of the likes of Dublin. And in fact, people don't really want to have their funeral there. They want to have it in their local church. They want to be there with the people there. So we can bring the gear too. And the answer to your question is the other equipment that, we are limited to things like 4G signal, but we do have the likes of Westnet, who are, as with a lot of these things, we find the community pull behind people, and everybody will pull down all barriers to help us with this. So even where we can't get 4G, with the likes of Westnet, Peter Moore, who will go out of his way, will get us the signal. So there's not a lot of circumstances that we can't cope with from a practical point of view. But actually, the environment, you mentioned about football matches, the environment of a funeral is actually easier to stream than a football match. We are often in the middle of a field with 4 open sides. We have the luxury of a roof and 4 walls in a church. Yeah. The actual setting in a church, we set ourselves up near to wherever the sound source, near to where the singers are, where whatever music is, and we bring that into the service. We can... obviously the focal point is the altar, and we wouldn't worry people about the intrusion of it. It's kind of, as quite rightly says, we have to be sensitive, we have to be respectful to people. And one thing that we do is we only view who face us. We don't view who is in the congregation. The last thing we want to do is to put a picture across of somebody in an absolute, the worst time of their life. But what we do ask people when we do this is, could you please supply us with at least some memories, some photographs, and some pictures of people? And what we do is we intermingle them with the presentation, as with any live thing. And it actually is quite a touching thing. One particular case we had, it was a very sad case of a young girl, that 11-year-old girl. And what came to my mind, when somebody speaks, it means one thing. When you get a picture of that, what they're talking about, it's another. And we brought in a particular... We had a lovely picture of this young girl, and one of the people was making a tribute to them and mentioned this young girl when she was at the beach, and we had a picture that we brought into that. Yeah.
So a picture speaks 1,000 words.
It certainly does. Yeah.
So lots of people are asking cost. How much would it cost for somebody like you guys to come in and stream a funeral?
Yeah. Well, I guess that, at the end of the day, people need to know what that's all about. It depends on location, and it depends on the what else we're asked to do. If we're asked to bring other, which we perhaps mention in a minute, but you bring other sources into the funeral. But on a sort of a standard 2-camera shoot with a technician and the cameraman within a reasonable space of Westport, of our base location, we'd be looking at a figure of around about €550. And if I can just say that is... that is usually affordable for most people. It is probably the price of return journey on a so-called low-cost airline for people with a 2-day notice. We're sort of saying, look, this is generally affordable. There are other things that we can bring into it, which I'd also like to touch on. You mentioned about us bringing the funeral to people. And I mentioned to you a couple of years back about the FaceTime situation. Why couldn't we do it 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, about FaceTime and back and forward. That's the other unique thing about this, is not only can we bring the service to people, we can bring them into the service.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're going. Now, those get more complicated. Those are all doable. They're pushing the boundaries, as I was saying to you before, Tommy. We haven't written a script for all of this. The boundaries are moving back. So we're saying that we can do what people want us to do. All we say is this is what we can do. If you want us to do it, just bring people in, we can do it.
All right, well, it's an interesting concept. Dowdmedia.ie is the website if people want to find out more about the possibilities of live streaming of a funeral mass because of circumstances where maybe, as I say, there are relations and family members abroad who won't be able to get home but would love to be able to hear and see the actual ceremony and the funeral live on a computer. Sounds like the way forward. Conor, are you going to go into this technology business full time?
Hope to, yeah.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
but you like camera work and all of that stuff. Yeah, brilliant. And you're teaching that as you go along.
Well, trying to.
Not easy. Okay, listen, thank you very much indeed for coming in. A lot of calls. This one says, my husband died a few years ago and a laptop was set up in the church for my daughter to see his funeral mass. She is one of the undocumented Irish in the US, and that is something, of course, that is another issue. She found great comfort in it being part of her dad's mass. It's a great idea. Maybe charge less when you're sorry, that's to do with recycling, my apologies. Lots of other calls. Funnily enough, and this is a good point, with the new general data protection regulation that we're all dreading to a degree, that's coming in at the end of this particular month, is that something that is going to impact on the possibility of live streaming?
Well, I don't believe so. We live stream football matches, and at the end of the day, the 30 people that are on the pitch have agreed to it, and the people who are in the crowd have agreed to it. We're live streaming funerals, and people will know, and the people that are up speaking, are aware that that's it. I mean, we generally don't have a huge face thing, but that undocumented Irish, is an important point. There's a huge amount of people, and it has happened, and I know a number of times it's happened where people cannot get back for their own parents' funerals, and what we're saying is, the technology now exists. We can bring it to them, but we can bring them to it
as well.
That's where we're coming from on it, and that's fascinating. And when we're not writing the boundaries on this, we're just saying we can do it. You tell us what you want. We don't really have a menu of what we offer. We hope people will say, well, hang about, these guys can do this. Can they do this? That's really what we're up to. And of the likes of Conor here, who mightn't say much, but I'll tell you, he can do it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so if you want more details, as I say, it's dowdmedia.ie, or there's a mobile number which is 087 185 1276. That's 087 185 1276. Brendan and Conor, thank you both very much indeed for coming in and speaking with us on that particular subject today. So dowdmedia.ie is the website address. Very interesting. Thank you both for coming in, and good morning to you. This is Midwest.